Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another video where we're going into game week 11 off the back of another tough week for some FPL managers. A bit tougher as we're going into the season. Let's see if we can get that green arrow going into game week 11.
Okay, then, so we're going to kick off into my team first, as always. And yeah, as Ben alluded to, it was a tough week for some managers. He meant me. Another red arrow, 1.7 million to 2.3 million. I only got one attack and return in my starting 11. Well, one return at all in my starting 11 last week, which was Morgan Rogers. Just a terrible game week. I've had this Man City triple up, and it's just not helped me out whatsoever. I've had them for their worst run in years, it seems. So yeah, we'll get into my team. I am quite happy with my team at the moment, though, despite it doing so poorly. And we'll talk through that in a second. So yeah, David Raya's in goal. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you have seen how well he played in the first 5 weeks compared to the second 5 weeks. It's almost like a stark contrast. I think we sort of expected that, though, in terms of he's never going to keep up that amount of bonus points, save points for the long term. So it sort of almost evened itself out throughout the season. I think that's the case with a lot of these FPL assets that aren't performing at the moment. Similar with Haaland. They've had a lot of returns in a short space of time, and then it's just gone to nothing. Whereas if that happened every other week, I don't think we'd be as reactionary to get rid of some of these players. Same goes with Raya. I'm pretty happy to keep him for the long haul as it stands. Rico Lewis starts the defence. Obviously, he was benched last game week and came on, which is like the worst case scenario. Brighton away this week. He started in midweek in the Champions League. I expect him hopefully to play again just because how bad Kyle Walker was, but we can't guarantee anything there. And then Ryan Aït-Nouri, again, a blank at the weekend, which I thought was so undeserved. He played so well, so attacking, almost more attacking than Cunha at points. And yeah, disappointed to come away with a blank, but Southampton at home this week looks pretty decent. And then Diogo Dalot with Leicester at home. Obviously, Man United have got three really good fixtures with Leicester, Ipswich and Everton in their next three. Diogo Dalot got some good attacking threat. Obviously, he missed that open goal a couple of weeks ago. So hoping he can get some points on the board this week. What's your thoughts on that defence, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, like I'd expect 50% clean sheet rate here in terms of your defence, which is not a bad rate to have considering how little sort of returns we've had defensively so far this season. I agree. I think Aït-Nouri is a fantastic pick, and it's almost benefits you, or there is a benefit slightly to him blanking this week, is the masses won't then go and bring him in for this game week against Southampton, a decent fixture. They'll see the blanks and think, oh, don't really fancy that. But Wolves are starting to play a bit better because fixtures breeds form, and Aït-Nouri is playing really well. It's a difficult one with Rico Lewis. Obviously, 90 minutes midweek is not ideal, but like I said, I think he should start anyway. He's been performing sort of the best out of any other player that can play that position. And then, yeah, Dalot, it's just a case United got to turn it around now. And let's see if they can continue the decent start that they've had with Rude.
Okay, then, so we're moving on into the midfield. We're going to start off with Cole Palmer. We're recording this on Wednesday night, and at the time of recording, Maresca said that he didn't train today. So a bit of a risk there going into with him. Obviously, he doesn't play midweek fixtures at the moment anyway because he's not in the Conference League squad, so there's no real update there. Obviously, he sustained that. It was more of an impact injury with Lissandro Martinez sort of kicking him in the knee. I'd expect him to play at the weekend, given his quote. It wasn't necessarily too negative. He said we just got to reassess him, and you'd sort of expect that from an impact injury with him in terms of if there's bruising or anything like that. So, yeah, I'm no physio, but I'd expect him to play against Arsenal. Obviously, it's a massive game for Chelsea. If they get 3 points there, they're looking really, really solid favourites to get in that top four. Brian Mbeumo up next. Obviously, he's blank last game week after coming off that 15-point haul. I thought Brentford in general sort of got that goal and then just sat back and deserved to lose it by the end of it. It was a really good game, to be fair, on Monday Night Football. But yeah, still backing him. Still got obviously the talismanic figure that he has always been. And Bournemouth at home this week is a solid fixture to go into with him. Likewise with Semenyo, Brentford defensively have not been too good so far this season. Obviously got that 10-pointer against City last week on mine and Ben's bench, which was obviously super frustrating considering both our transfer plans were made to bench him that game week, which is just so classic FPL. And then Phil Foden, probably the most disappointing asset that I've bought all season. We've had that one assist off the bench so far in I think the last 4 or 5 weeks that I've owned him. he'll stay for one more week, but the grand plan next week is to definitely get rid of him, no matter really what he does in that game. He's been returning in the Champions League, just not the Premier League for me at the moment. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that midfield, Ben?
Yeah, difficult one with Phil Foden. Like I think there's a severe lack at the moment of sort of decent, sort of mid to high end price midfielders, and there's no one really sort of pushing forward and standing out for FPL managers to really jump on in terms of a bandwagon. We've not really seen too many bandwagons other than the Semenyo and Mbumo one, and you've already sort of covered that base. But yeah, I don't think the Palmer injury is too serious, and then, unless Maresca is sort of trying to sort of hide the fact that it's a potential sort of 2 or 3 week injury. We'll have to just wait and see. I don't think we're going to get anything conclusive before the deadline, if I'm being honest. So managers just going to have to take a chance on it. It means you're sort of not captaining him this week, but if you've got sort of another sort of high end and high priced player, then you're probably not looking at going to captain him anyway. So yeah, all in all, fairly solid midfield.
Okay, then, so moving on to the forward line, and first up we have Ollie Watkins. He's blanked 2 weeks in a row now, despite having two big chances missed last game week. It's quite frustrating at the moment with him. Liverpool away this week. I don't think it is a terrible fixture from Aston Villa's point of view. I think he will get chances in that game. It's just all boiling down to whether he takes those chances. He seems to get chances pretty much every single week in this Villa side. Erling Haaland currently still has the armband. I'm sticking with him for one more week. It's become almost a joke at points. One goal in his last 5 game weeks. It's definitely not good enough for the price that you're having to pay at the moment. I have thought about, and I am considering maybe selling him next game week. It's a bit up in the air at the moment. When looking ahead at the captaincy decisions, he doesn't really come into my thoughts other than maybe 1 game week in the next 10. So for a price like that, I think you can definitely warrant selling him if you can make sure you get the best players that you can to sort of suffice that with Salah's, Palmer's, Saka's, etc. So definitely in the thoughts, but it won't be this week. He's definitely my favourite captaincy option this week. I think even if I had Mo, I would probably still go with Erling Haaland this week, despite obviously Salah returning pretty much every single week at the moment. And then Raul Jimenez to wrap things up. Crystal Palace at home. Probably unlucky not to return last week, but I'm still looking forward to owning him. He's one of the highest base bonus point strikers in the game, just below Cunha, I do believe. So when he does get those attacking returns, highly likely we're going to see 2-3 bonus points for him at the moment, which is great. And there's also that potential of him maybe having the penalty duty for Fulham. On the bench, Mikalenko's currently first sub. It's a toss-up between him and Rodgers. It could even start Mikalenko depending on sort of any news we get on Rico Lewis. I will probably go ahead with Lewis just because I feel like the upside's more there with him. And then, Rodgers, I don't really want to play a double Villa attack against Liverpool's defence. Obviously, defensively, they've been fairly decent so far this season. So, happy to bench him for this week, although I'm sure he'll return and Watkins will probably blank. What's the thoughts on the forward line?
Yeah, I think the forward line is a solid one. Obviously, there's sort of a difficulty in a couple of blanks there for your strike force over the last few weeks, and it's made it sort of tough to get a good sort of rank recovery from that. But yeah, out of all the choices that you've got, Haaland for the captaincy is probably the sensible one. You could almost be in a position where you could go really left field and with your captaincy decision, if you're confident on Ait Nouri or even in Mbumo, then you could maybe even look at doing that and go something sort of really outside the box, just to sort of try and get that high upside, because Haaland's EO, I can see it being under 100% owned this week, which is the first time in a little while that that's happened. So that's going to be really interesting to see. So there's always that opportunity there for you this week to go sort of against the grain with captaincy, because you're almost doing that already with Haaland against sort of like a Salah or even a Human Son.
Yeah, definitely. I have thought about that in Boomer captaincy, but the only negative I'd say on that is when they set up against Fulham on Monday, Damsgaard was almost playing that second striker role to Vissa, so it'd all be dependent on that lineup information, which obviously we won't get before the deadline, but definitely considering it. I wouldn't say it's a lock on Haaland, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay, so moving on into my team, and we got a green arrow last week, which was fantastic. A few returns in my team as well, which can't complain about at all. So up to 179k in the world. Still got that first wild card in hand as well. So it puts me in a really, really strong position. I'm almost in two minds about whether to wild card in game week 12. I'm just going to sort of assess and see as I go and almost sort of play the game as if I'm not going to, and then assess from there, because at the moment my team looks decent. I'm quite happy with it. I've got a couple of free transfers as well to use this week. So let's see what we do here. So starting off in goal, we've also got Raya in goal. For me, like pretty much a season keeper unless I wild card. So I'm not too fussed about sort of transferring him out. There's no point transferring out keepers. That side is just not there unless they're injured. In the back three, we've still got quite an expensive back three. The potential planned one free transfer would be Rico Lewis to Ryan Aït-Nouri. I don't think you can ignore his performances at the moment, and I don't think you could ignore the fantastic fixture against Southampton as well. Southampton aren't scoring too many goals. Wolves are conceding goals, but Aït-Nouri is looking very dangerous. And do I trust that Manchester City defence after 3 defeats in a row? I do not. I do think there's going to be a lot of goals in that Manchester City Brighton game at the weekend. I just think they're going to go for it and just try and prove a point and try and get that confidence back by outscoring a team rather than sort of maintaining control throughout the 90. So that's the reasoning behind potentially Rico Lewis going out. Obviously, it's sort of a bit of a sort of toss of the coin on Lewis or Gvardiol, but Gvardiol does hold that greater attacking threat, so he's worth the keep even for the extra money, in my opinion. We've also got Trent in there, who's been a little bit disappointing, but he's almost sort of been a passenger in this team so far this season with sort of points flying in left, right, and centre. So happy to hold him for now. Again, one that over the next couple of weeks I may look to move on, but we'll just have to wait and see with that. Villa at home, not the best fixture, not the worst either. The attacking threat is just not as high as it was last season, so that's the consideration for potentially transfer him out over the next couple of weeks. Josh, what's your thoughts on the defence and that potential transfer?
Yeah, I think the getting out of that City double up defence is the smart move. Obviously, only 2 clean sheets so far this season. One in game week 1 versus Chelsea, and then the other against Southampton at home. So it doesn't scream like they're going to keep too many clean sheets going forward. Obviously, missing Rodri is just, you can see how much it's hurting them at the moment. They're just losing games that you know that they would definitely win if he was in the side. I think also Lewis does have more rotation threat than Gvardiol. Obviously, Gvardiol's almost nailed down that left back spot. Played left centre back as well in the Champions League in midweek, so we know that he can play quite versatile across that back line. Lewis, for me, to Aït-Nouri is obviously a fantastic move for this week. It's a prime entry point if you're looking at Wolves players in general for Southampton at home. They then go on a run of approximately 10 game weeks where there's just not a bad fixture in there. So really easy long-term holds the Wolves asset going forwards. And obviously you got Trent there who, like you say, definitely a passenger at the moment. The attacking threat just isn't there unless it's a set piece right now. Just seems to play in a lot more reserved than what he usually does, or what we saw under Klopp for sure. But it does give you that freedom and flexibility to just pour, £3 million or whatever it will be when you downgrade him to an asset, which is really nice to do in one single transfer.
Okay, so moving on into the midfield, and as you can see, I've got Salah on the captaincy. This captaincy decision is one that I'm playing for EO rather than anything else, I'll be completely honest. I think his expected ownership is going to be quite significantly higher than Haaland's this week, so that's the reason I'm going for it. And of course, he's in much better form as well. We've got to take that into consideration. And the fixture is slightly better just because Liverpool are playing at home. So that's the reason for the captaincy. And you know what? I quite like it. And I'm not sure I'm going to actually change it before the deadline. Mbumo and Semenyo, just like Josh, playing against each other. Again, I think it's going to be quite an open game with quite a few goals. Neither team sort of like really sort of like defending. Like Brentford can't defend. Bournemouth like sort of playing on the front foot rather than sort of like playing defensively. So I think we're going to have quite an open game and almost hopefully the perfect game for both of those guys to thrive in. Morgan Rogers in there at the moment as well. Again, this could be a toss up between him or Jamie Vardy playing. We'll just have to see. Like Vardy against sort of like a top 6 team so far this season hasn't produced very good stats, whereas Rogers seems to be very consistent, especially away from home recently. So I'm going to hold him in the starting lineup for now. Again, the expected ownership is going to be higher for Rodgers than it is going to be for Vardy, so that's the safer pick for me. And then Smith Rowe as well. The returns sort of like come sort of ticking along. They're not too bad. Like we see sort of a return every 2 or 3 game weeks, which for the price point really can't complain about. Again, it's one to consider transferring out. If I do wild card, he'd probably be one that sort of goes out on that wild card, but we'll just have to wait and see with that. Josh, what's the thoughts on the midfield?
Yeah, overall really solid. I think, yeah, Mo Salah definitely will be the most captain player this week. Just been unbelievable form. Obviously, the new bonus point system really favours players like him, getting a lot more shots on target, which then therefore gives him more bonus points in the baseline system. So, yeah, really good numbers from him so far this season. Rodgers as well, like I mentioned, I think he's a decent player to start this week. Liverpool, although they have played some tougher opponents, I do think they are to be had against a very good attack from Villa. I know obviously they've just come off a 4-1 defeat to Spurs and then a 1-0 defeat to Club Bruges, but I'd back this Villa team to basically score against anyone. They're so good going forwards. And then Smith Rowe as well, like you say, he's just ticking along, nice and tidy. You can play him every week. You know the minutes will be there. So yeah, I have no qualms about playing him this week either.
And moving on into the strike force, we've got Erling Haaland on the vice captaincy. Not too much to be said about him. Like, is a potential that he will go out next week. I'm in the same sort of predicament as Josh. Fixtures get a bit tougher, but it's Haaland, so we've got to remember that he's still a fantastic player. It's just a little bit of service that's missing, and the statistics show that he should really be scoring every week, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't fallen his way over the last few weeks. And like Josh said again, like the blanks have all come in a row, but the holes all came in a row as well. So we've just got to sort of bear that in mind. And then Cunha up top as well. I mean, he looks fantastic at the moment. He was levels above any other player on the pitch against Palace last game week. Got that assist, maybe sort of unlucky not to come away with a little bit more than just the assist. And he does rack up those bonus points as well. On the bench, we've got the reserve keeper from Brentford who could have potentially played if Flecken had actually come off injured, which would have been a bit of a decision to make between Raya and him for the starting place. But he stays on the bench. We've got Vardy, Howard Bellis and Konza with the potential of not actually playing that wild card in game week 12 and holding it for a point where maybe I get a few injuries, maybe we wait sort of a little bit longer and sort of see how this team progresses, because we're in a good spot at the moment. We've got a couple of free transfers. We're not too bad. Josh, what's the thoughts on the overall team and the potential strategy of not actually hitting that wild card in game week 12?
Yeah, I think it's a viable one. You've got the structure that most people are going to anyway, in terms of having Salah and Haaland, or Salah and then a couple of premium midfielders, and you could easily get to another premium midfielder with sort of Trent and Mbeumo there. So yeah, I don't mind not wildcarding. I think Cunha is a fantastic option to have. Someone who I'm quite jealous of not owning this week. Highest ranked player on the baseline bonus, which is unreal. Just get so involved in that attack for Wolves, and potentially on penalties as well. I think he is worth that extra million compared to Strand Larsen for sure, despite Strand Larsen scoring last week. Haaland, I agree, it's such a difficult decision because I think everyone knows that as soon as they transfer him out, he's going to start bagging loads of goals. But it's one of those decisions that he's going to have to score 2-3 goals at this sort of state of play. If Salah keeps returning, if Saka returns, if Palmer returns, these sort of guys that you can bring in with the money that he costs, I think it's an interesting decision. Obviously, it's one that everyone thought about pre-season. I didn't think it would come to this sort of stage, 10 weeks in, where you could easily viably go with that Haaland at the moment. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think that Vardy call as well was 50-50. As a United fan, I could easily see him scoring and shushing the Stretford end. So it'll be an interesting one going forwards. Okay then, so that's our Game Week 11 team reveals. Let us know any questions you have in the comments and we'll be sure to respond to them. Tough game week last week for me, hoping to bounce back. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, hoping to just maintain what I'm doing, getting some consistent returns. I mean, like 51 points last week is nothing sort of too special, but just keeping above sort of and getting those returns ticking along, I can only hope for the same or similar again. Okay, so remember to like, comment and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. Thank you for watching. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
I'm not going down with you. So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.